And this is my musical life.
A wall full of photos of conductors with whom you've worked. And here, obviously, in the position of honor is Toscanini.
And that's where he belongs.
Yes. Toscanini it was who, in a sense, gave you the first big entree into the concert world, wasn't it?
Yes. I was doing the finale, the second half of the first act of the Valkyrie, starting with the Winterstürme down to the end of the act. That was the first thing he heard me sing. And he was attracted to my voice. And he asked Schatzenov, Sam Schatzenov, who was a musical consultant, of course, a former critic, if he knew me. And he said, yes. He said, I'd like him to come to sing for me. So, of course, Schatzi called me and asked me, would you go to do an audition for Toscanini? So after I got up from the floor, I said, of course I'll go. And I went to the Astor Hotel where he lived at the time. And if you got time, I'll tell you a little
Please.
story.
Oh, absolutely.
He had no accompanist because Schatzenov didn't show up. And he himself was not a great pianist, Toscanini, by his own confession. Nor was he a great cellist.
Oh, really?
And he, not being a great pianist, said to me, well, how are you going to sing? He said, and besides, do you have any music? So under my arm, I had a copy of the Ninth Symphony. Oh, he said, what can I hear that? I want to hear something for you to sing. And I sang that Una furtiva lagrima for him. And he played, he made a mistake, and he scolded himself, but he continued. I continued on, and then he caught up with me. And that sort of seemed to satisfy him, and he immediately said, would you like to do the Ninth Symphony with me? And I did. And
that was when, Jan? 38?
38.
38.
Yeah.
So that actually was 3 years before the Met debut.
That's right.
And you sang with Toscanini several times.
In fact, I did a thing with Toscanini before the Ninth Symphony. He was doing a Busoni piece called Rondo Arlequinesco, which has a very little tenor part, sort of a drummer boy, which was, you don't sing any words, la 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 la, which was very difficult. And he assigned me to do that one. And if you got a minute, I'll tell you a story about that. He said to me, you will walk in this direction, and he pointed to a door, and he said, you will go and you will turn right when you get there, and continue singing till the end of the number. So I went, and instead of turning right, I turned left. And this man who was so nearsighted, who couldn't really see and couldn't see what happened in the next room, called me over in front of the orchestra. He said to me, you know, you have a very beautiful voice, a very beautiful voice. But you must listen when I tell you something. When you go outside the door, turn right, not left, because you turned left. And he knew by the sound. But I never disobeyed an order of Toscanini since then, and I spent 15 glorious years with him.
The many recordings we have give us a picture of Toscanini as a musician, but really, what was he like as a human being?
Well, my opinion was that he was a great human being. I loved him. I worshipped him. He was a man. He was a mensch. He was a dedicated human being, not just a dedicated musician or a genius. He considered, he had compassion, he had love, he had wonderful feeling for people. He scolded some people, he yelled, he threw his stand down, he broke his baton, he stamped his feet, he threw his own watch on the floor, and everything was fine. But he was a human being, and never carried a hateful grudge. If he scolded somebody, it was over in 2 minutes, and a forgotten incident. He never held a grudge against anybody, as far as I know. And those years that I spent with him were glorious.
Did you ever get in the way of his temper? Did he ever lose his cool with you?
No, but he almost lost his cool. We were doing a rehearsal, and those rehearsals used to go on for hours. The day that you had a rehearsal with Toscanini, you never made another appointment, because you didn't know what time you'd get out. Either he'd throw you out in a half hour, or you'd stay there for 5 or 6 hours. We were doing Traviata, and I mispronounced a word. In fact, it wasn't mispronouncing. I used it instead of la, I said un. It's a very insignificant thing. And he stopped, sort of looked at me, and said, un'altra volta, let's do it again. And I went through the same thing, and again, I made the same mistake. I must have had a bad day, because Alice must have spent an extra $1 or so, but I was upset. And he looked at me, dropped his hands from the piano, and I said to myself, oh God, this is it. And he said, Peerce, you too? That's the nearest I came. everything that was done with Toscanini, as far as the operas were concerned, is a matter of record. But the greatness of doing, and you know that I've often mentioned it to you, to make a record is one thing. To go into a studio and do one measure of music and another measure of music, sing a high B flat, do it over again, spicing. With him, you didn't do any kind of tricks. This was the performance. This is how it sounded that day, and that became the record. Traviata, Bohème, and Ballo, and others that we did.
Ballo serves as a perfect bridge to get us to the gentleman who is next to Toscanini, Bruno Walter.
Bruno Walter, a very kind, wonderful conductor.
And the photo is inscribed, "To my great Riccardo," because you sang Riccardo in Ballo.
Yes.
With Bruno Walter.
When the Met revived it, he was the one, and he chose me. And we had Leonard Warren, and myself, and Milanov.
Did you sing anything else with Walter at the Met?
I don't recall whether I did Don Giovanni with him or not.
I have a feeling you did. I think
Yeah.
I remember it.
Yeah.
But two very dissimilar conductors in their approaches, yet each, as you say, extraordinary.
Well, I had the same thing when I did Fidelio.
Yes.
With him, and with the man.
Hans Knappertsbusch.
There he is, Mr. Knappersbusch. If I had time, I'd tell you a story about him.
Who says we don't have time?
Well, we'll make time. Well, when I got to Munich, my plane was late, and I arrived at 9 o'clock in the morning. I was at 10 o'clock, I was in the studio, never met the conductor, and without a piano rehearsal, after he said to me, you come here heralded, Mr. Peerce, and you have to prove it. And I said, you know, I know of you too by reputation. I never heard you either. And now that we're both here, you'll have to prove it too. With that, he hit me on the back very playfully, and I went and stood up at my appointed spot, 30 feet away from him, and never know what he wants to do, what he's going to do. And and his orchestra was fabulous. They were his orchestra. And he just told me, we'll do the aria first. And all I had time was for a cup of coffee. And when I began to sing, I realized immediately that it's a little different than Toscanini. Toscanini was full of zip and fire. He was slower. And, but it was great. Nevertheless, we got into the control room to listen. And he said to me, you know, Mr. Peerce, you sing very beautifully, but it's a little fast. I said, and I was going to tell you, Maestro, you know, you play beautifully too, but it's a little slow for me. And then I told him I'd studied it with Toscanini, and he said, well, let us meet on an even plane, and we'll strike a happy medium. And we did, and the record is a proof that
yes,
different but good.
Well, that very first note in that aria, Gott, it's a note that should send chills up the spine of every listener.
Well, now you're talking as a critic.
I guess I am.
So I'll have to let you judge
okay.
my Gott. Here's one you may not recognize.
As a matter of fact, I don't.
Edward Johnson.
Ah, the former general manager of the Metropolitan.
A very wonderful human being. And what was in his favor is this man was a great singer himself. So he knew the psychology of an artist. He knew how to say no without hurting you. You know, every artist comes in and has a request. He wants to do this part, he wants to do that, he wants to do this performance, that broadcast, and you can't say yes to everybody. And with his wonderful smile, and with his wonderful manner, and with his great considerate feeling, he would let you down.
Really?
But it wasn't a letdown. But the marvelous part was, when you did a performance, he'd come into your dressing room, to every performance, have something to say in greeting, and he'd say, don't forget, when you come here, when you draw your sword, I want you to have this stance, and before you know it, it's giving you a last little minute advice, says, that's why I used to do it, and to try to do it. And you'd say, gee, this man is interested. And it was a wonderful association.
Was it helpful?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. First of all, you want to know, you know, when you walk on stage, you're alone. God is with you, and even he says you should be prepared. But you want to know that somebody's standing in the wings rooting for you, and that's what he did. He used to stand, and as you began to sing the aria, he would make a motion to you as if to say, I know you're going to do it. And you'd come off, he'd be the first to welcome you and say, oh, this was great. And if he found fault, he said, you know, you shouldn't have done this. You should have turned so into... He'd have something to say which showed his interest in the artist. And he was a lovely person, and I miss him as a friend, and may he rest in peace.
And over in the corner is a gentleman associated with the Metropolitan Opera now. It's music director James Levine.
Oh, James Levine is a wonderful, great genius, a great conductor. I don't think I can use adjectives strong enough to describe him, because I'm sure you may share the same opinion. But I go back with him when he was a youngster. He's still a very young man. But I met him when he was 10 years old. I was doing opera in Cincinnati, and that was his hometown. And this youngster, whom everybody sort of found getting in his way, getting in your way, he always had something to say to you. You know, Cincinnati in the summertime was a lark. We'd go out there, we'd drink Coca-Colas while we were backstage, and when our cue came up, you say, hold my Coke, you go out and do your aria and come back again. We didn't. We did the best we could in the music, tried not to neglect it. So he'd come back and say, you know, the dotted eighth note. Wait a minute, who are you? He said, no, but please forgive me, and he would correct you. Well, when the summer was over, we had enough of this young boy with an autograph book. And he said, would you please sign my autograph? Well, I was very glad to sign his autograph. It meant I was going to say goodbye to a young boy. And to be nice to him, I wrote to James Levine, a worthy colleague, wishing you great success in your career, in your future. Signed, Jan Peerce. Well, years went by. I forgot that I ever met this youngster, and I was booked to do a performance of Rigoletto with the Detroit Symphony in Meadowbrook. And they told me, I said, who's the conductor? They said, a man by the name of Levine. I said, Levine? Never heard of him. Oh, so my office said, well, he claims that he knows you. He can't wait for you to come to perform. When I got there, Cornell McNeil said to me, gosh, I'm glad I'm going to witness this meeting between you and the conductor. I said,
between you and your old friend?
Yes, I said, I don't know him. He goes, oh, come on. He said, he knows you well, and he admires you. We came to the rehearsal hall, and this person in the room was playing the score of Rigoletto as I'd never heard it played before, because he's, as you know, he's a great pianist. When he finished, we knocked at the door, and we were welcomed in, and he jumped up from the piano, ran to me and embraced me, and God, he said, finally, we're going to work together. And I sort of looked, he said, you don't remember me? I said, unfortunately, I don't. He ran to the piano, brought an autograph book. He said, did you write this? Is this your handwriting? And sure enough, it was my handwriting. He said, oh, I said, don't tell me, you're the one in Cincinnati. He said, yes. And that's how we sort of became reunited, and very happy to see of his great success, and he's marvelous and a wonderful human being.
Yes. You keep coming back to that. That's a motif throughout your conversations about these.
I tell you what probably prompts me to stress it. In my younger days, and you probably had the same experience, our parents would emphasize one thing above all: ein Mensch muss man sein. You must be a person. And Mensch, just being a person, sounds nothing. But when you say a Mensch, meaning a person, a whole person, and again, one who has consideration for his fellow man and loves the human race, that is a plus with me.
Toscanini is on your walls twice, Jan, but so too is another gentleman, Pablo Casals.
Oh, yes. Yeah. There he is.